Script, welcome back to the Bible Stories series. Try to imagine that you live on a seemingly sturdy luxury cruise ship. Everyone is immersed in a party, singing and dancing. But you are the only one who sees the iceberg right in front of you. You desperately shout, "We're going to crash. Escape quickly." As a result, not only does everyone not believe you, but they also think you are a buzzkill lunatic, and even want to throw you into the sea. This is the portrayal of the life of today's protagonist, Jeremiah. He lived in the southern kingdom of Judah around 600 BC. That was the final twilight before the nation's destruction. Externally, the powerful Babylonian Empire was eyeing them covetously. Internally, there were corrupt kings and false priests. Everyone hypnotized themselves, saying, "We have God's temple, we are absolutely safe." Only Jeremiah was forced to become the child who exposed the emperor's new clothes, becoming the most hated person in the entire country. His life was a lonely battle destined to fail. Jeremiah did not want to be a prophet. He came from a priestly family and could have lived a stable life. But when he was still very young, perhaps just in his early 20s, God suddenly intervened in his life. God said a very famous line to him, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, before you were born I set you apart." This means, before you were even born, I had already assigned your mission. What was Jeremiah's reaction? He was terrified. He declined, saying, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I do not know how to speak, I am too young." He felt he was too green, ineloquent, and timid. But God did not accept his resignation. God reached out his hand and touched his mouth, saying, "Do not be afraid of them. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." Just like that, a socially anxious youth was forced to take on this incredibly arduous mission. What was the message Jeremiah preached? Why did everyone hate him so much? The mainstream false prophets at the time were all saying pleasant things. Babylon will soon be driven away. Everything will be fine. Only Jeremiah preached a despairing truth. He even performed startling performance art. He put a wooden yoke used for labor, like an ox, on his own neck and walked out onto the streets. He declared, "God has decided to hand us over to the king of Babylon. Your only way out is to surrender. If you resist, it's a dead end." In an era of high nationalism, this sounded like absolute, traitorous rhetoric. The king felt he was shaking military morale, and the people felt he betrayed his motherland. No one believed God would let them lose, because they had the temple as their protective amulet. Jeremiah fiercely rebuked this superstition. "Do not trust in deceptive words and say, 'This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord.' If you continue to do evil, this temple will also be torn down." For telling the truth, Jeremiah paid a tragic price. He was betrayed by his own family, and the people of his hometown even plotted to murder him. The priest once beat him and put him in the stocks at the temple gate for public display. The most miserable time, several officials, not wanting to hear his depressing words, actually threw him into a muddy cistern. Imagine, a prophet, thrown into a bottomless well, with no water, only mud up to his knees. He slowly sank in the darkness and stench, waiting for death. If it weren't for a kind-hearted eunuch risking his life to save him, he would have died in there long ago. In order to convey God's words, he lost almost all dignity as a human being. The most moving part of the book of Jeremiah is not his heroism, but his weakness. He was not an invulnerable tough guy. He was a highly emotional and extremely sensitive person. The book records many of his complaints and cries to God, which we call the Confessions of Jeremiah. He once cried out to God, "Lord, you deceived me. I am ridiculed all day long, everyone mocks me." He was even in so much pain that he cursed his own birthday, Cursed be the day I was born. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow and to end my days in shame? This is the real Jeremiah. He loved his compatriots, but his compatriots hated him. He was loyal to God, but the mission God gave him made him wish for death. He was like being caught between two giant millstones, his soul ground to dust. He is known as the weeping prophet because his tears never stopped. He prophesied for 40 years, and was mocked for 40 years. Finally, in 586 BC, that day arrived. The Babylonian army breached Jerusalem. Everything was exactly as Jeremiah had said. The king was blinded and taken away, the nobles were killed, and the people were exiled. The most heartbreaking part was that the temple, considered an impenetrable fortress, was burned to ruins by a fire. When the prophecy came true, Jeremiah did not have a single trace of the "I told you so" thrill. On the contrary, his heart was pierced. Legend has it that he sat on the burning ruins of the city wall and wrote another book, the Book of Lamentations, singing the final dirge for his beloved city. His correctness was his greatest tragedy. If the story stopped here, it would be too despairing. The greatest aspect of the book of Jeremiah is that on the eve of the nation's destruction, in the darkest hour, God declared through Jeremiah one of the most important hopes in the entire Bible, the New Covenant. God said, "The days are coming when I will make a new covenant with you. It will not be like the law written on stone tablets in the past. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts." This was an earth-shattering declaration. The old era, relying on the temple, relying on external laws, was over. In the new era, God wanted to live directly in people's hearts and change them from the inside. The city was destroyed, but the faith was not. Jeremiah planted the seed of hope in the ruins. 600 years later, this seed would be made to blossom and bear fruit by Jesus Christ himself.